I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to this evening's meeting on this beautiful, maybe a little wet Tuesday evening of February 7th. This is the second meeting of the year for the Board of Directors. So we welcome you all. We'll begin with an invocation by Pastor Brian Oswalt, and I'll lead the pledge. All rise.
Let's pray. Father God, thank you for this day that you have given. By your grace, you gave us breath in our lungs this morning, and in so doing, Father, we know that you have given us purpose. God, I pray that we've been good stewards of all you've provided for us this day, and that we have sought you in all things. God, forgive us where we have chosen our way over yours. God, I pray over this meeting and for each person involved. I pray that you would bless each leader as you guide and direct them as they seek to do what is in the best interest of this wonderful community. And God, we love you and we thank you for the grace and goodness that you give us each and every day. Would we be difference makers this day and each day moving forward? In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now call this meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Director Aaron Holliday.
Here.
Just in time.
Director Phyllis Beard.
Present.
Director Marcia Dobbs-Smith.
Here.
Director Dudley Webb.
Here.
Director Karen Garcia.
Here.
Director Steve Trusty.
Here.
Mayor Pat McCabe.
Here. We do have a quorum. Consider approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions to the agenda, or items to be removed or moved from the consent agenda to new business? Hearing none?
I have a request, if I
Yes.
may. I just want to ask if we can acknowledge items 1 and 2 after the consent agenda.
We will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move approval of the agenda.
Director Garcia made a motion to approve the agenda as presented, seconded by Director Trustee. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Agenda is adopted. Approval of the minutes of the regularly held meeting on January 17, 2023. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Second.
Director Garcia made the motion, seconded by Director Webb. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. Recognition of guests. We have a proclamation this evening. February is Black History Month, and here in Hot Springs we have a proclamation that reads as follows. Whereas Black History Month is an annual celebration that honors the contributions and sacrifices of African Americans who have helped shape the nation of its rich cultural heritage, triumphs, and adversities that are an unforgettable part of our country's history. And whereas every U.S. president since 1976 has officially designated February as Black History Month, its origins date back to 1915. When historian Carter G. Woodson, co-founder of the Association for the Study of Negro Life in History. In February of 1926, Woodson created Negro History Week, which in the decades that followed, mayors and cities across the country recognized annually with proclamations. And whereas, while we recognize and honor the important influence African Americans have played on a national level, the Black history of Hot Springs is also worth celebrating. From the critical role African Americans individuals played as a main workforce at the bathhouses in establishing Hot Springs National Park as the Spa City, Americans' first resort, to the tradition of the Negro League teams that holding baseball spring training in town, to the countless local African American community leaders and trailblazers who has worked towards equality. And whereas Mr. John L. Webb was one such pioneer. He moved to Arkansas in 1918 when the Supreme Lodge of Woodmen of Union opened their national headquarters in Hot Springs. He oversaw the Woodmen of the Union building construction and built houses to attract black doctors to the area. In 1945, he built the Emma Lease Webb Center, which also housed nurses and bathing attendants from the Woodmen of the Union Hospital and bathhouse. Another notable individual who left an indelible impact on our community was Kenneth Adair, a one-time welterweight boxer who returned to Hot Springs to found and be editor of the Arkansas Citizen newspaper. He also served for 13 years as city alderman for the 3rd Ward. And whereas Mr. Adair also credited with encouraging James Donald Rice Sr. to continue his civil rights activism in Hot Springs. In May 1963, as president of the local NAACP chapter, Reverend Rice led the Hot Springs School District to the negotiating table to begin the integration process, which was completed in 1968 with a new Hot Springs High School campus on Emory Street. And whereas one of the first African-American teachers who transferred to the newly integrated high school, John Pascal, founded the Council for the Liberation of Blacks in 1969 in the famed Black Business District along Malvern Avenue. The CLOB successfully changed racial policies in Hot Springs and created job opportunities for African Americans. Another teacher and leader in the CLOB, Elmer Beard, served for 16 years on the Hot Springs City Council and as president of the NAACP Unit 6013 for many years, advised rising politician Bill Clinton on race relations, and served on the committee to resolve the reapportionment of the city wards in 1969 that created the city's first majority-minority district. And whereas the thoroughfare of this majority-minority district, Malvern Avenue between Grand Avenue and Convention Boulevard, was known as Black Broadway between 1930s and the 1960s. Henry Bernard Glover credits his musical aptitude partly to growing up in Hot Springs. Glover became one of the first successful, influential African-American executives in the music business. He is a member of the Blues Hall of Fame and the Arkansas Walk of Fame. And whereas the significance of African Americans both in our nation as a whole and our local Hot Springs community cannot be overstated. Thus, we pay tribute to those who have laid the groundwork for equality and honor those who continue to this day to follow in their footsteps. And therefore, I, Pat McCabe, Mayor of the City of Hot Springs, on behalf of the entire Board of Directors, do hereby proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month in Hot Springs, Arkansas. A witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city to be fixed on this 7th day of February in the year of our Lord 2023. A lot of history there. Thank you.
Amen.
All right, at this time we'll hear from Gary Troutman, President and CEO of the Greater Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce and Hot Springs Metro Partnership, who will deliver his economic development report. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Tough act to follow there. And I do apologize. Got you the report this morning. Normally don't push it that late, but saw most of you at the banquet last week, so you can appreciate that it took a little to put together a gathering with 760 folks. But going through the items by project, by header project, we met with County Judge Dennis Thornton from Hot Spring County about the remediation of Jones Mill, and actually got to he held a press conference on the 23rd, and we got to actually witness the first buildings come down. We met with him earlier today, and if you haven't been to Jones Mill in a while, it's just amazing. They've got they're working on 3 rows of the buildings. It's just acres and acres. It's about, I don't know, probably 50 acres worth of buildings, but 40 acres worth of buildings. But they've got 3 rows of that coming down, and it's something to see. The amount that they've done in just the past 2 weeks is incredible. Matt Bill, Origami Saki, got a whole lot of press this past month. Sentinel Record, Democrat Gazette, and he spoke at National Park Rotary. So we're excited about that announcement and his grand opening coming soon, most likely in March. You may know that nasty rumor that I'm a Whataburger fan, and that may or may not be happening, but it looks promising, and we've confirmed with the owner. I know he wasn't at the meeting that Cole and I attended here in these quarters that day, but he's very much interested and seeking to bring one to town. So hopefully we can help him do that. As far as Majestic, we just formally kind of turned the clock on the clock has begun in January. Cole has prepared a really incredible slide deck for prospects. We've had a couple meetings. We've had one, as I told you last month, that reached out to us even before we got started, and our committee is going to meet again tomorrow. So things are moving there. We'll personally brag on Scott Dew's leadership, but Vince Signorelli's vision. See now why he's so successful at Tanner's and why pickleball is blowing up before our eyes. ACTI, always a pleasant surprise that someone's still expressing interest at this point, but we had another prospect this past month and was content to wait out the results of the phase 2 and then see where we stand at that juncture. So as far as workforce, you probably noticed we had a lot there. Unless you tell me to, we probably won't go to that detail, but I just wanted to accentuate that Gary Jackson, our new workforce director, has been in all the schools and many, many times this month. We've had a couple meetings at Lake Hamilton in particular. As of recently as yesterday, been invited to career training education meetings there with their group as we continue to plan draft day. Just got a note from Amanda Porter before I came. We have 12 schools confirmed already for draft day. It's not until late April. We've got 25 businesses already, and we haven't really even started on trying to recruit businesses. So invited 30 schools, 12 are already confirmed. Aside from maybe banquet results, and most of you know those, probably the most exciting thing I've got to tell you tonight is had a call and visit from Joe Quinn. Those of you that remember the Good Roads campaign and all his work in that, not only in Garland County, but the state measure in November of 2020. We've all slept a bit. It doesn't seem that long ago, but that long ago. And came by for a visit. We kind of reminisced about the old Little Rock Media days with him at Channel 11, myself at the Democrat Gazette, and he finally said, "Hey, I'm representing SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management, and we hear that you guys are doing great things in workforce in Hot Springs. I'm here to tell you that we've awarded you guys a $60,000 grant for workforce and workforce ed." So we were very pleasantly surprised by that, along with 4 other markets in Arkansas, and those are Northwest Arkansas, Jonesboro, El Dorado, and Russellville. So I guess bringing Gary on draft day and the work ready ACT program we're doing is getting some attention, and to that last point, we're working on that as it approaches at the end of March, training at National Park College. Speaking of, NPC had great news. Being able to award 4-year bachelor degrees in association with UA Monticello. Huge for young men and women to not even leave Hot Springs and get a 4-year business degree right here. And on other topics, general matters. We had a tour of Mountain Valley Water, met with their new management team there. Just an incredible visit. I wish I could take you all there to see what they do, and it's not about water, it's more about packaging and bottling. Bill Solider came, presented to our staff the Visit Hot Springs marketing plan for 2023. I'd remind y'all that even though we're not necessarily tourism, that most folks think the chamber is the hotbed for tourism. So we have probably 60% of our calls and 80% of our walk-ins are folks that normally are looking for tourist information. So hence all the tourist info when you've been in the chamber and seen our big board. Cole and Gary attended the ICSC Red River Deal-Making Conference in Dallas, visited with several retail companies and restaurant tours. So made several good contacts there, good information. I appreciate those of you that came to our biannual legislative reception at War Memorial. a couple weeks ago. Despite the bad weather, we had a really nice turnout. And Cole and I went back to Little Rock a couple days later, attended the Preserve Arkansas Awards. You'll recall the Reserve won honorable mention for excellence in preservation through rehabilitation. Taylor Kempkes Architects were involved in that, as well as a winner in El Dorado. And Statements here, interior design firm, was involved in that. Hot Springs was recognized indirectly. Professor Carl Matthews from the U of A Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design received an Outstanding Achievement in Preservation Education Award for his Advanced Design Studios project focused on downtown Hot Springs. And last but not least, again, thank you all that made it last Thursday. Thank you to Mother Nature for cooperating. But our community awards winners were Man of the Year Scott Burton, Woman of the Year Lynn Hargis, Large Business Oaklawn, Small Business Hot Springs Pediatric Clinic, Rising Star Sarah Richardson, Organization of the Year the Hot Springs Board of Realtors, Volunteer of the Year Trish Nooner, and Ambassador of the Year Libby Harrington. We also gave a special Lifetime Achievement Award to former Senator Bill Sample. And that concludes my report. Happy to try to answer any questions if I may.
Any questions of Gary? Director Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. If a business or employer wants to participate in the fair.
Draft day?
Yes, they just contact the chamber.
Uh-huh. Now, just to be clear, I didn't mean to interrupt. Draft day or work keys?
The one with the schools.
Yeah, draft
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
We're happy to help them and we'll get them set up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you indicated you're really not about tourism. You're about business development and workforce development, but certainly we have a lot of baseball history here, and
Sure
we had
do.
the unveiling of the Babe Ruth statue. The only, I guess there's 4 in the country or in the world.
The world.
But only 3 that are I learned that are just of him, and this is the only one in which he was in his heyday, his power wheel, so to speak. So that will be a tourist attraction, certainly at Majestic Park. So.
And we are all about tourism, but obviously, you know, your Visit Hot Springs is specifically dedicated to that. But to your point, Mayor, we talked today. I think you'd agree. Mr. Ruth's grandson. I mean, if you'd have hired 2 professional speakers, couldn't have had 2 better than the 2 yesterday, between the baseball historian and Mr. Stevens. So.
Yeah, and that was financed by Dr. Bobby Muldoon, the Hamby family, in honor of their father, and Lee Beasley. Each of them did a third of it, and so as it was indicated, they made 3 phone calls, and there were 3 yeses, and everything was put in action. So thank you for their community spirit, you know, in giving to that project. So
We're very lucky they did. Steve Harrison had the vision, and that statue's beautiful, beautiful day. And they had some baseball after the event
Right.
yesterday.
all right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
This time we'll hear from our city manager for the city manager's report. Mr. Burrow.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Have quite a bit to talk about tonight. Thought I was going to keep it short, but after going back over the notes, it's good information that I want to share with each of you. The application for rent and utility emergency subsistence payments is now available at the United Way of the Washita's website. You can get there at unitedwayofthewashita's.org. There's more than $233,000 of CDBG COVID funds available. We split that between $133,000 for rent assistance and $90,000 for utility assistance. So, you know, I know there's a lot of folks out there that could take advantage of that. So that's up and running. If you can't get to the website, just call the United Way and they'll be able to help you with that. So appreciate the board allowing us to make that available. Last Tuesday, the planning manager Rick Stouter and planner Don Sweet Dobbs conducted an overview driving tour for RKG Associates of Hot Springs through various neighborhoods and housing types. The consultants, Russ Ombalt and his associate, also completed one of the stakeholder interviews before we had the ice storm hit. They're rescheduling some Zoom calls, but that project is well on its way for the housing strategy, and we'll be giving you more information on that as it becomes available. Historic preservation. We filed the application for the National Park Service for $300,000 in historic preservation grants. That was submitted earlier today. There's also a new grants workshop group composed of staff from planning and development, parks and trails, and engineering, which have also identified several other potential grants that we can, grant opportunities that we can follow up on. So we'll be looking at those, and hopefully we'll receive this $300,000 historic preservation grant. Over at our animal services, starting yesterday and running through February the 17th, Animal Services is having a half-price adoption event for Valentine's Day. We've been very successful in the past on some of these holidays to see a lot of our pets within the Animal Services get adopted. To see the animals that are available for adoption, you can visit the shelter at 319 Davidson Drive, weekdays between 10 and 4:30. You can also find out more information on the Animal Shelter's Facebook page or by calling 262-2091. Happy to report that the city sales tax revenues for November came in 3.6% higher than that of November 2021. This is putting us on a year-to-date increase of 7.58% for 2022. On January the 21st, I announced that the Assistant Chief of Police, Billy Harverton, would assume the position of Interim Chief of Police effective immediately and run until such time as a new chief is named. Chris Chapman, our previous chief, he continued working through January the 27th, kind of part-time during that last week between Little Rock and Hot Springs, but he was here to ensure a smooth transition and support Chief Harverton as he begins this new assignment, and we're really excited to and really grateful that we've got somebody like Chief Harverton that was able to step in and continue our momentum until a permanent position is filled. Utility employees go well out of their way all the time. We talk about them a lot when we have main breaks and things like that. You know, these are the guys that are out there in the 17, 16 below freezing temperatures fixing these water mains. But they also do things that they see, and this is just kind of a mentality that I think a lot of our employees, most of our employees have, and it's a service mentality. And from time to time, I like to share that kind of positive feedback with you. The staff at the compost facility recently shared a story with me that while 3 of our water distribution crews were actually at the compost repairing a leak, they noticed an elderly gentleman at the self-load compost area. You know, the guys just kind of dropped what they were doing. Joey Vernig, Tom Millsap, Jared Gunno. They immediately grabbed shovels and went over to the gentleman, and I mean, within minutes they had his truck loaded. And you know, that's just stepping away and seeing somebody in need and heading over there to help. And again, that's the kind of service mentality that we try to exemplify in all of our departments. But those 3 gentlemen did a stellar job that day, and we appreciate what they're doing. Some project updates. We've got several projects that we're working through engineering and RDOT. Some of these have been several years in the making, and so we're proud to see a lot of this work starting to happen. Whittington Avenue, that work continues, and they're focusing on sidewalks and rain gardens around the Whittington and Woodfin area. That's got a project identification of 061455. Southwest Trail section of the Hot Springs Creek Greenway Trail. That work started this week on the concrete foundations for the 2 bridges. That next section's actually going to cross the creek in 2 places, and those foundations are being poured this week. The Gene Wallace Trailhead, which is where it will terminate there by TV Hill Road. The pre-construction meeting was held today. We should be getting that out very soon for that construction. We've talked a lot about wayfinding over the years, and this is a partnership through our Metropolitan Planning Organization with West Central Planning and Development. That wayfinding, which is going to start in the immediate downtown area and work its way out into the city. We found some errors in some of the layouts as they looked at the final copies. They're making those corrections, and we should see those coming up here in the next 2 weeks, right around mid to late February. Woodlawn Bridge, that's a big job we have with RDOT. Planning to let the replacement for the Woodlawn Bridge over Stokes Creek later this year. We should have that finalized date very soon. We're actually going to try to do 2 bridges in 2023. Overlay of Grand Avenue. RDOT plans to let this job in March. It is an overlay of Grand starting at Valley Street and going to Albert Pike, and then along Albert Pike to Airport Road, along Airport Road to the MLK Expressway. This work includes a small section of Malvern from Grand to Crescent and Central from Grand to Market, but most of that work is going to be following that Grand to Airport Road section. Very happy to see that coming to fruition. An MLK overlay is continuing. They plan to let this job in May. This is another section of an overlay that will pick up where the previous job stopped. This is up on the expressway itself. It continues on to Highway 70 to Ross Maddox near Piney Grove Church. So most of that will be taken care of in that particular job. It's the beginning of the year, and every year we have our fire department in here with us today, our chief and fire marshal. We'll start flow testing all of the hydrants. The importance of that is when you get a code red call or one of the press releases that we send out and your street or your vicinity is listed in there, take note of that. Often whenever they flush the hydrants, we'll release minerals that have stored just naturally in the pipes. That can discolor your water. It's safe to drink, even though it is a little bit discolored. It doesn't affect taste, but what we suggest is just running all your faucets. Let those run until it dissipates and turns clear again. That's most important when you're washing clothes because it can stain some of the clothes with the iron content. So I want to make you aware that that's happening. I think they started maybe this week. Saw the first code red call come out yesterday. So that's going to be throughout the entire city. So every section of the city will be impacted by that. While we're on fire, their applications are being accepted for the probationary firefighters. The application has been posted in the HR job postings at cityhs/careers. Applicants must be at least 20 years of age to fill out the application. And that's 20 years by April 1st, 2023. They've got to meet all the qualifications and also pass some pre-employment screenings. The current entry-level salary for our firemen is $40,623. Deadline to submit the applications will be 4 p.m. March the 17th. If they pass a fairly rigorous physical agility test, if they pass that test, they'll be immediately given the written test that same day. So we look forward to having a good applicant pool coming in for our fire department. And then the last thing I have is our 2022 paving program. The last update I gave was on January the 17th. Since that time, we've been able to pave Saxony Court, Saxony Street, Windsor Street, Ramble Terrace, Ridge 2 and Ridge 3, Garnett Street, Gladstone Street, Oakcrest, Farnsworth, Taylor Place, and Spencer Street. Of the planned 15.39 miles, we've paved 13.03 of those, which brings us to about an 85% completion rate for our 2022 paving program. Now that paving crews have caught up, the milling crews now will start on Ridge 1. You know, as I've mentioned in that last report, we've stopped milling. We're about to get that going again. We've got 2 paving crews that'll be here. I feel confident that we'll be able to knock out the rest of the paving over the next couple of weeks, and then start bringing. We're working now on your 2023 list. The board has not approved that yet, but we'll be bringing that to you very soon to get approvals and get that work going. And you know, again, we're just excited to be able to see this kind of work. And I've actually had phone calls where people are noticing streets being paved and all the work that's being done. So appreciate our street crews, our engineers, and all of those that are working on that and partnering on those things. And last thing I got is the State of the City report. Plan on giving that February the 21st. Probably about as long as what I just did. But State of the City, we're excited. We've got a good report to share with you. Lance, Aaron are doing the yeoman's work on that, and I appreciate that. But we'll be given the State of the City on February the 21st.
Very good. Any questions of Bill from the directors? Thank you. This time we'll hear from individual directors on announcements of upcoming events. Are there any upcoming events that the directors would like the public to be aware of? Director Webb.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Let me find it. I just want to update the District 4 meeting. I did announce at the previous board meeting that it was being held March 9th, and due to some scheduling conflicts, the meeting will be moved to Thursday, March 20th. Still at 5:30 p.m., still at First Lutheran Church. But I did want to make that announcement tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any other announcements from directors?
Yes,
Director Beard?
thank you, Mayor. The McCoy Legacy Day is February 18th at Champion Community Center, and it's from 3 to 6 p.m.
Very good. Thank you. Any other announcements?
3 to 6 p.m.
Pardon?
3 to 6 p.m.
I have one. You might have seen me on Facebook quite a bit, just trying to educate and create an awareness of the need for vaccines and to consult with your local physician on the different vaccines that might be right for you. Oaklawn Racetrack, in association with the Arkansas Foundation for Medical Care and the Arkansas Department of Health, are partnering to provide free COVID-19 and flu vaccines. This will occur on Saturday, February 18th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Oaklawn Park. I don't have the actual location. I'm going to think it's in the event center. But again, it's from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Booster qualifications for those who have Pfizer and Moderna recipients. They must have completed the initial 2-dose series, and it must be at least 2 months since their last COVID-19 vaccine. For those with Janssen, which is a Johnson & Johnson vaccine, they must have been at least 2 months since their last COVID-19 vaccine. And obviously, if anybody's recently had COVID, they must be out of quarantine. So for those of you who are looking for that extra booster, that may be an opportunity for you to receive it on Saturday, February 18th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Oaklawn Park. So thanks to Arkansas Foundation for Medical Care, Oaklawn, and the Arkansas Department of Health for partnering in that activity. So if there's no additional announcements, we'll begin with the consent agenda. These are of a routine nature that do not merit individual discussion. And as Director Holliday had asked for the first 2 items there, we'll make some special announcements right after this. So if there's no further, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved, Mayor.
Director Garcia, seconded by
Second.
Director Holliday. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The consent agenda is adopted. And item 1 was a resolution confirming the appointment of Cheryl Batts to the Hot Springs Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. So we congratulate her. And the second is the appointment of our own Director Phyllis Beard to the Advertising and Promotion Commission. So congratulations. We look forward to your service in those. All right, so we got 7 other action items. 4 of them are resolutions and 3 of them are ordinances. So we'll begin. And we'll begin with Resolution R-23-19 and ask City Attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-23-19, a resolution authorizing the reimbursement of salaries and benefits expenditures from American Rescue Plan Act funds and for other purposes. That concludes reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt?
So moved.
Well, that was quick.
All right.
We got
She got it.
Director Trustee, seconded by Director Webb. Okay. And our staff report will be provided by Karen Scott, Director of Finance. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, and the members of the board. As you know, the city previously received ARPA funds in the total amount of $11,370,797 in 21 and 22. The city designated $10 million of those funds to be utilized by the city for lost revenue replacement. We have expended $3,260,129 of those funds in 2022. We propose to transfer the balance of $6,739,870 to the general fund to reimburse salaries and benefits expenditures. The ARPA rules allow the expenditure of these funds for any lawful government purpose. Staff recommends authorizing the transfer of the ARPA funds to the general fund to reimburse salaries and benefits expenditures. These funds would be restricted and would only be used and spent after specific city board approval and budget amendment.
Very good. Any questions of Ms. Scott? Thank you. Do we have anybody sign up for this item?
No, sir.
Any discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Beard.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Webb.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now we'll consider Resolution R-23-20 and ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-23-20, a resolution granting a short-term residential rental special use permit for 228 Little John Trail. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Trustee, seconded by Director Webb. And our staff report will be provided by Kathy Selman, Planning and Development Director. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. This appeal is from the decision of the Board of Adjustment to issue a special use permit for short-term residential rental at 228 Little John Trail. Hot Springs Code requires special use permit approval as a prerequisite to short-term residential rental licensing in residential zone districts R1, 2, 3, 4, A, and L. Hot Springs Code requires an applicant for a special use permit to provide evidence of a city certificate of occupancy report, a dimensioned site plan, and a floor plan, as well as remittance of a $475 fee. 228 Little John Trail owners provided the required documentation and fee, and the special use permit was approved by the planning director. The planning director's decision was appealed by neighbors to the Board of Zoning Adjustment, the BZA. Following public notice, neighbors appealed BZA's special use permit approval for Board of Directors consideration. Little John Trail neighbors made numerous complaints to the city about this property being rented without proper approvals and a license. And evidence indicates that it was. Owner Hayes failure to comply resulted in city utilities being disconnected until advertising of the short-term rental ceased. At the very last minute, the owner applied for short-term rental special use permit, met those requirements, and the permit was approved. According to neighbors, 228 Little John Trail has not been a good neighbor. Regardless, short-term rental special use permit requirements were met, and the special use permit was approved, first by the planning director and then on appeal by the BZA. 228 Little John Trail is located in District 5, is a 4-bedroom home with an overnight maximum occupancy of 10. There, in your packet, are lots of timelines about when things came in, when things were advertised, when approvals occurred, when hearings were to be held, when they were held, what the outcomes were, and following all of those steps, we are here this evening to hear the appeal. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. In the packet, it stated there were 5 off-site parking spaces obtained. Where are those?
No parking is required at this property. It
No
was-
parking is required?
That is correct.
But the STR ordinance was adopted, a few years after this property was annexed into the city. So why wouldn't the ordinance apply to everyone?
I can attempt to address that, Director. The STR ordinance adopt the parking code. The parking code did not apply to this building when it was built prior to its annexation, and so therefore, no off-street parking is required.
Well, I would appreciate that being brought out to, I was not aware of that it would been brought out as an exception during our deliberations. But it did say there were 5 off-site parking spaces obtained in the packet. Is that true?
It may say that in the packet, but regardless of the number that it says are there, none are required. And in considering the special use permit, the home inspection, the certificate of occupancy inspection, is the document that governs. And if parking is required, we refer to that document for that number. In this case, no off-street parking was required.
And if you said for occupancy of 10,
Yes.
and if that's the case for full occupancy, where will the occupants park?
I don't have an answer for that question. Parking is not required. Whether the 10 maximum occupants come individually in 10 vehicles or in one bus that drops them off and then drives away, all would be speculation. I can't answer that question.
But maybe I'm missing something. I thought it would be kind of common sense that if that many people are there, some vehicle's got to park somewhere. But maybe I'm wrong. You said that the allegations of illegally operating were true. So it was not until we first passed our first STR ordinance regarding licensing and applying for licensing over almost 2 years ago. And based on the timelines you had in the packet, it appeared that this application did not happen after those letters that were mailed, but after the board set the deadline for the cap and when the last applications would be. Is
This-
that appropriate?
You're correct. This
interpret-
came in at the 11th hour. There's no question.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Ms. Sullivan?
I have a quick question. Just to be clear, the responses that you have in the packet are directly from the individuals. That isn't a third party translating this is actually from your department. The response.
Some of it is.
Okay.
If you could tell me specifically what,
Just it kind of the end of the attachments. It says responses to summary 228 Little John Trail, and the responses are done with initials. I was just curious
yes,
if
those
that
are
was first
staff
person.
responses.
Okay, just making
Yep.
sure that wasn't part of a third-party narrative coming back. That
No.
that's actually what you all.
Those were the allegations raised by the appellants. There were numerous appellants That was an attempt to try and put it all in one place and provide answers where answers exist.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure it was actually
Yes.
their words and not a recollection of
Mm-hmm.
what they might have said.
Will you clarify for me the reason that utilities were disconnected?
Yes, the owner was notified several times by a variety of means that they were advertising without approval of the city, that the property was available for short-term rental. They failed to respond, and the most efficacious way of handling that problem was to make it impossible to occupy the structure by disconnecting the utility service. Writing a ticket and sending them to court would have meant a delay of many months.
And so when you disconnected the utilities, what was the next step or the communication with the property owner?
We continued to make them aware that approval was required by the city, and eventually, again, at the 11th hour, an inspection was done. The inspection was failed several times. Finally passed inspection. That is a certificate of occupancy inspection. It inspects the primary structure and a few feet around the structure. It does not inspect accessory structures, and it does not include the dock that has been the subject of much discussion. That final passing of the inspection enabled them to complete their submittal of a special use permit application. It came in at the very last day and was reviewed as all the other applications were reviewed.
Okay, so it promoting itself as an STR, how long was that occurring prior to you having utilities turned off?
I cannot give you a timeline, but I would say that we were actively pursuing enforcement for somewhere in the 6 to 9 month timeframe.
And how long were the utilities turned off?
They were turned off for a couple of months.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I have one.
Per-
Were there ever any complaints filed as far as police reports or people parking in driveways or any complaints from the neighbors during the time that they were operating?
We had complaints from the neighbors. We had numerous complaints from the neighbors. And many allegations that the quality of life in the neighborhood was being negatively impacted by the short-term rental activity at 228 Little John Trail.
Thank you.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. Another question brought up, you mentioned about the dock and that it was posted.
Specifically docks in the regulations, certainly that would be something to discuss. However, docks are regulated by Entergy and not by the City of Hot Springs. The city's interest in the dock typically is only with regard to electrical service.
Well, I know that the wait is now over 100 for Entergy for inspections to get new docks or docks inspected. So if we know something's unsafe, I'm just asking that we consider that, and as a director of that department, if you believe it, to recommend it, or I sure believe that we should look at all safety issues.
Those safety issues that we can influence or have jurisdiction, yes, I would say yes. But as to docks, many of the elements of dock regulation are out of our hands.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but I meant pertaining to an STR license. or
That would be the
a
board's,
special use permit.
that would be the board's decision to make.
Understand. Thank you.
Director Webb?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I think Director Garcia was bringing up some of the questions that I had too, and they all kind of stem around the safetiness of this dock feature. And I'm looking at the timeline here too and seeing that the final inspection was passed on 10/31 of '22. Would, just to help me understand everything too, this final inspection included everything but the dock. The dock was later inspected and passed November 8th of '22. Does that sound right?
It does sound right.
Okay, so if that's the case, what did the STR licensure look like as it was printed and permitted prior to the 8th?
There is no STR license. This appeal is about
Okay.
a special use permit, and that being a prerequisite to anyone applying for a short-term rental license.
Thank you for clarifying. I used the wrong acronym.
That we
I
make
should've
it as
said-
hard as possible.
I should have said special use permit. So what did that special use permit look like? Did the special use permit indicate that nobody can access the dock, or was there any indication that the dock was unsafe?
No, there was not, because the certificate of occupancy inspection, which is what is used for the special use permit, only pertains to the primary structure and the area a couple of feet out from that structure. We do not have building code authority beyond that space.
So I guess the next question I have, excuse me, is how does somebody know the dock is unsafe if it's unclear on the special use permit and the property owner doesn't have to disclose that, or would he or she need to disclose that information to the renter? And if we don't have it so that that is a mandatory requirement, I think this kind of supports what Director Garcia was stating earlier, that maybe there needs to be some type of modification to issues similar to this one for safety.
That may be a direction that you want to go, but at this time, we have not gone there.
Mayor, if I may, one of the issues that I would be concerned about if we went into trying to regulate the docks are not in the city limits. City limits stop at the 400-foot contour.
But I think it warrants a discussion on how to
Absolutely.
address the safety issue, whether if it's not safe, to then have it off limits some way.
Well, we can
for
certainly
use.
address that.
But
and-
that's something for a future
Yeah, I think
discussion.
I think that's a valid point, you know, and to the degree that it's appropriate to hold or kind of put it in a holding pen until Entergy were to weigh in on it, you know, that may be. But again, according to what we're hearing tonight, you know, as Ms. Selman said, that's not part of our SUP, and as Brian says, it's outside the county. And many years ago, people accused me of living in the county, and I said, well, I can see the county from my house. Kind of a takeoff of Sarah Palin saying she could see Russia from her back deck in Alaska. And then a director said, but your dock's in the county. And I said, every dock in Lake Hamilton is in the county. There's no dock on Lake Hamilton that's in the city limits. So, Director Webb?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just to, I guess, kind of respond to what you were sharing, and you too, Brian. Even if the dock, and by technical means, is in the county, which they all are, would that still prohibit us from just mentioning that, yes, the house has a special use permit, but no, this particular dock hasn't been inspected and approved? Would it
Well,
prevent
I
us
think
from having that type of disclosure?
I think we agree that maybe there could be a revisiting of our regulations, and if it's appropriate to have Entergy give us some letter or some acknowledgement that the dock is properly permitted and acceptable. But that wouldn't be necessary for this discussion here today, but I understand the concerns. Are there any other questions of Ms. Selman?
I have a question, and I'm not sure which would
Director
be
Holliday, go
to
ahead.
answer. So we do have in our ordinance different ways that we communicate with those who are out of compliance for one reason or another, and eventually it would be the loss of their license if they are approved already. And I know we're in advance of that, but my question is, if somebody gets their license revoked, is that forever, or do they reapply later? Because I'm a little concerned with the history of this particular property and the fact that we don't necessarily have anything in place at the moment. The fact that the cities had to spend the amount of time that they have and eventually turn off the water to get attention is not, and we all know I'm probably the biggest proponent of short-term rentals, but this is, we have an owner here who has not operated in good faith within the regulations that we've put out, and so I'm having a hard time with this particular decision.
A couple things. First, I'll try to address your hypothetical. You're speaking of a situation in which there's already been a short-term residential business license issued.
Mm-hmm.
Someone falls into out of compliance, and for whatever reason, the license is revoked.
Correct.
They would be eligible to reapply, assuming that they are not under a zoning that is subject to a cap that has been exceeded.
Okay.
I would like to point out that you do have some other people that are signed up to speak on this item, so to the extent that there have been any conclusions drawn.
So, are we have any further questions of Ms. Selman?
One quick one, but I'm not sure that it's a question for you. Do we know if the sales taxes were being collected?
I
since
do
there
not
was no
have that
license?
information.
We don't have sales tax information. We still don't receive that. Assuming they are, if they were part of, if the rental was part of an Airbnb or VRBO, we do have agreements, or A&P has agreements in place to collect their 3%, which also has, which they're also remitting to the state. And one thing that hasn't really come up in discussion, the only thing I'll add is, while we were going through this process, there were times where we thought that the home was rented as an STR, and it ended up being family members that were there, enjoying their own home. And secondly, we've had more than this particular one. When they sign up for one of these platforms, you may not be able to get them to take the listing down. We've heard that in more than one occasion too. So just a thought there that I think the board needs to be aware of that as well.
Very good. Kathy, I'm trying to get you to take your
I know
seat,
you
but they
are.
keep asking questions. Director Garcia.
I don't, it may not be for the director, but might be for the city manager. How many platforms was this property advertised on?
I don't think we know. There's Lance, I think there's somewhere around 80 platforms. It's really impossible to know how many of them they were actually on.
And after the water was disconnected and then the lid to the meter was broken and the water was turned back on, was that cost reimbursed to the city by the property owner?
Well, what took place there is we disconnected the water. There was a lock placed on the meter. The lock was cut. We do have in the ordinance a fee for that. My understanding is, yes, it was charged. Once that happened and we saw that it was still on a listing, that's when we didn't disconnect the meter. We took the meter out of the ground.
So they were charged and they paid.
To my knowledge.
Thank you.
Director Webb.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So in this neighborhood, and this might be inside of the packet, and I missed it, and if I did, you've got my apologies for it. But Little John Trail, about how many current STRs are on this street?
I think there may be 4 in the area.
And out of how many homes?
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I don't have that number.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Question for Planning Director Selman? I would suggest you move swiftly. That completes the discussion and questioning of the Director of Planning and Development. We'll move on with those who are signed up to speak on this, and we'll be fairly liberal in regards to if some of you came in later that wanted to speak, we'll allow that. We do ask that you make your comments concise. We allow 3 minutes, and 3 minutes is plenty of time for you to be able to convey your thoughts. So we'll begin with Mr. Rob Graham, who is signed up to speak. Mr. Graham, please come forward, restate your name, address, and district, please.
My name is Rob Graham. My wife and I live at 230 Little John Trail.
We did a timeline, if this is helpful.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Graham.
But we've lived there for 11 and a half years, and this was a rental from the day we moved in. And there have been family reunions, there's been cross-country teams, there's been just all kinds of parties and everything else. And, you know, for the most part, everything's been fine. But you do have some that get a little belligerent and throw trash in your yard and park in your driveway and things of this nature. But, you know, it's just part of it. But when I saw the ordinance and I started reading it, I got really excited because you were going to limit the number of parking spots. You were going to limit the number of people that could stay in the house. You were going to control the noise. And it all sounded like a really pretty good deal. I was kind of excited about it. And as it rolled around, as the planning department told you, they never did anything. They were sent 3 different notices. The last notice they got was on August 9th. And the water was shut off the first time on August 22nd. The meter was cut off, the lock was cut off the meter on the 27th of August. And then I think they finally just took the meter out. But during this time, there was...
Mr. Graham, will you just repeat what you just said? I want to make sure I heard that right. The lock was cut off?
The lock was cut off where they put a lock on, when they shut the water off, the lock was cut off. And their radio read meters, and it was pretty well destroyed. But anyway, they went ahead and they came back and took the meter completely out of the meter box, which pretty well put an end to them renting it out. But as far as the inspections go, in the short-term rental rules, it talks about the site plan and the site plan development for the graphics representation that's going to go for the house. The very first sentence, location, size, use of buildings, signs, land, and improvements. And I mean, to me, the improvements, that's the dock as well as a deck or a carport or anything else. And the inspection on the dock did not get done and completed when it was supposed to have been done. And even though the dock is not in the city limits, the meter supplying electricity to that dock is. The current that goes to that dock flows right through that meter on that house and goes straight out to the dock. Some kid gets out there and there's a wire that rubs up against that dock and the kid touches the ladder, he's done. I mean, it's happened before. So the fact that the inspections were not completed until after October 31st, this thing should have never been set up as for a conditional use permit.
Okay. Anything further, Mr. Graham?
No, sir.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Shorty Barrett. Mr. Barrett, please come forward and restate your name, address, and district, please.
I'm Shorty Barrett. I'm an attorney for the owner, Tanja Hayes of 228 Little John. May it please the board. To address some of the issues that were asked by Board Member Garcia, 5 off-street parking sites have been appropriated for this location. We don't anticipate all 10 people will drive. Maybe they will. I would think if 10 people are coming, maximum of 5 cars, but I don't know. That's speculating. There's a big issue about the 11th hour made here. The application was filed before the deadline. One thing that I want to be clear about and make sure the board's clear of, this is a special use permit. That's what this appeal is, of a special use permit. And as the zoning commission stated, what's required is a complete application, a fee remittance, a dimensionized site plan, a dimensionized floor plan, an inspection report, and off-street parking. And they state that all of these are met. We're in compliance for the special use permit. We've not been issued a license yet. That's what we're asking for, is a license be issued now. Back to the board's questions. When were the utilities disconnected? I think that was your question, Mayor. The utilities were disconnected because there were reports that it was still being rented, when in fact it was family members that were staying there. It was a family member. How long did they advertise? They were advertising on 2 sites, to answer your question. They had been advertising for about 8 years prior to y'all's regulations going in place, and they could not get the site to take the pictures down. They blocked out all of the calendar after the second notice came. They blocked the calendar, but they still had the pictures up. I'm going to keep up with my time here because I'm running low.
Well, sir, we'll give you a little extra time
Okay.
since your legal representation.
Thank you, sir. But the pictures were still up. So the person that cut the lock off of the meter was the owner's son, who had come up after the other kinfolks had stayed at the house to clean up. And he couldn't clean up because he didn't have water. He was a young guy. He went out and he cut the lock off the meter. For that, we apologize. The dock has now passed inspection via a electrical contractor. Now, whether or not the city has oversight over that or not, I don't know, but repairs have been made. I want to say that this house now is ready for inspection for the short-term residential license application. We would like for that to go ahead and go forward. We're told by the staff, Kim Burks, and also my speaking to the city attorney, that there will be another 30-day grace period after this before the licensing process can start. We've already, the last hearing was November the 30th. We've had to wait until now to get this before the board because there was a 30-day grace period and then getting it scheduled on the agenda. We're told that there will be another 30-day grace period for an appeal to circuit court, and if that's the case, then we'll have to wait for the licensing process. We're asking the board to go ahead and instruct the staff to start the licensing process because we have qualified for the special use permit, and we will now pass inspections for the short-term residential license. Mr. Graham said, he spoke at the last meeting, and he said he would just call because they ruled against him. He would just call the police every time somebody came there. My client's been there twice since that meeting to stay at her own private property. Both times, for no reason, she's had the police called. Lastly, we are, let's see, there's one more point I wanted to make. I think I've touched on it. The dock will now pass inspection. If y'all have any questions, I'd
Do
be
you have
happy
any
to answer.
questions of Mr. Barrett? Director Garcia?
Thank you. Shorty, where are those 5 parking places?
2 of them are covered. They're covered parking in like a garage type parking spot, and the other 2 are adjacent to the covered parking area.
On
They're off street.
pavement?
I'm not sure. On pavement? Yes.
And when the platforms would not remove the pictures for advertising, but during the past 2 years, the property was still being rented.
The last time I'm aware it was rented was,
That, not after I got a notification, it did not get.
but summer of '22 it was rented commercially.
Was
correct?
early in 20.
Summer of '22.
Well, you just said that the son went there to clean up in August.
That-
So was that from
No, that was from other family members had been there.
people in the family?
Well,
but-
not the immediate family, some cousins came, stayed, it wasn't a rental.
I understand what you're
And then
saying.
the son went by to clean up. Yes.
But it has been being rented prior to that.
Yes. But there was a deadline. And of course, 11th hour is one thing, but a deadline's a deadline, and my client made the deadline with the application.
Was there a reason after the city notified them about the non-compliance with the city ordinance that application was not submitted sooner?
The problem for the delay in the application is more of a personal reason. My client is a mother of 3, 1 grown child, 2 that were still in school, but her husband had a debilitating stroke. He lost his short-term memory. He's completely disabled. She is now the sole earner in the family, and she takes care of all the family business. And it was one of those things where she was just a bit overwhelmed, and this thing was just easy to put on the back burner, I'm sorry to say, but y'all got her attention now, and she's trying to comply.
Well, I'm very sorry about that. I can relate to Ms. Hayes. Went through that for over 6 years with my husband.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that. Anything else?
Any additional questions of Mr. Barrett? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. John Bogle? Is there a Mr. Bogle? Am I pronouncing that right? Then we'll move on to Billy Curry. Billy Curry, please come forward, restate your name, address, and district, please.
Good evening. I'm Billy Curry. I live at 226 Little John Trail, and I've lived there since December the 18th, 1987. So I'm kind of the goat of the neighborhood, but not greatest, just oldest of all time, I think. This was a small neighborhood, narrow streets, houses close together. We've got to be good neighbors, and we were good neighbors for years and years and years. I was living there when the new owners moved into 228. It was a single-family residence, not a problem in the world. We all got along. We watched each other's dogs. We told somebody if their boat floated off the boat dock. We did everything a good neighbor should do. As soon as the house started being rented, the character of the neighborhood just did a complete turnaround. These were not our neighbors. We've had as many as 20 people at the house, down to 2. Not every renter's bad, but we've had parking problems, trash problems, noise problems, several trespassing problems, and we were on our own trying to defend it because we were in the county. And then when y'all annexed us, one of the things you said is you would give us more protection. We need that now. We need your help to regulate this. We are the people that are going to be there every day. We're tax-paying citizens of Garland County and the City of Hot Springs, and we're and support y'all. We support the churches, the schools, the short-term, restaurants, small businesses. We're going to be there. The collection of the money from this property is going to go back to Bowie County, Texas, when it's being rented. We want your help to make our neighborhood the good neighbor policy that's in the STR regulation and the character of the neighborhood like it used to be. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Any questions of Ms. Curry? I do have one. Tell me about the actual street of Little John Trail. We're prohibited from going out and exploring. We're supposed to hear everything fresh and new here
It's a
today.
peninsula. It's off of Robin Hood Drive, Lakeland Drive.
But is
and
it,
then-
you have curb and gutter?
No,
and
we
so,
do not.
you
And
know-
it's a peninsula, and it does the curve.
Yeah.
The streets are very
So you
narrow.
have a drainage, kind of a ditch,
No.
in front or no?
No.
Just
Just-
asphalt
just the
right into
asphalt,
yard?
Almost a one-lane road, and that's it. And then our yards start.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
I
Further
have a
questions?
question. If a fire truck had to come down that street and someone was parked on it, would it be a problem?
Yes.
Do they park on that street?
The city did change that you cannot park on the residential side. All the parking has to be in the center, but it still would be a really, really tight, especially around the corner when you come around the peninsula. It would be a really, really tight squeeze to get an ambulance, a fire truck, any kind of emergency vehicle down through there with parking.
Any further questions of Ms. Curry?
Yes. And the owner lives in Texas? Is that what?
Yes, ma'am. Bowie County, Texas.
Thank you.
Is that it? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna again call on, what I was saying was John Bogle. Okay. Elizabeth Elrod, please come forward, restate your name, address, and district, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Directors. My name is Elizabeth Elrod, and I live at 238 Little John Trail. Based on all the discussion, I guess my presentation's kind of different than what I had originally intended. To answer a couple of questions right off the bat, our street's more of a lane than it is a street. It was in a county. It's very, very densely populated. I have a picture, an aerial picture, if anyone would like to see it. Just last week, I had to go off into a neighbor's yard to let the UPS truck by. So that's how narrow it is, just to let you know. I called the city streets division and asked them if there was some sort of standard that the city streets should be, and they didn't know. So I guess that what we faced with is it kind of depends on where you were when you were there, you know. And I know that we were annexed, and I know although this was a planned subdivision and it is platted, the streets are super narrow. I think as time has gone on, it's gotten smaller and smaller and smaller because people's yards have grown over, the grass has grown over, whatever. But anyway, the issue about the potential 10 parking spaces frightens me, for one thing. The other thing is that 5 of those could be boat trailers. And what do you do with those? And that has happened. And we have one STR that is not, well, it was an STR. It's not operating as an STR now, up the street, that parks everything in the yard. So we've got boat trailers in the yard, and we've got them half in the street and half not in the street, but that's not them. The issue here is safety. It is, it's just very frightening sometimes that we could possibly be the victim of a fire or a medical emergency. The other thing is we've had numerous problems with potential, we call it potential hourly rental. There was a caretaker that was employed by the owner that we believe it to be renting it out by the hour, because we would see people going in and coming out, going in and coming out. We called the police at a couple of occasions, and they would be gone by the time they got there. One time they were there. There were some arrests made. The owner refused or declined to press trespassing charges on those people, but they were held for other reasons. Ms. Graham has got some other information about another situation with people who were occupying the house under that person's watch, so to speak. But regardless, the owner had employed that person, we understand, and should have been responsible for whatever went on under those roofs. The other thing is, I just have a real question as to, thank you so much for to the staff for doing, I mean, I know this has been a real problem with them going back and back and back and back. But I really cannot, I respectfully disagree with the site plan. And again, Mr. Graham noted that the dock was not noted on there, and there's been discussion about it not being under the guise of Hot Springs. But if it's not an issue, then why was it ever inspected? Why was it ever inspected?
Ms. Elrod, can you provide us a summary closing statement?
Well, my closing statement is I know Billy's the goat, but my family's been on that property since 1965. A member, and it's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a family neighborhood,
Okay.
and this is not what it's supposed to be.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions of Ms. Elrod?
Thank you very much.
She had a
Ms.
question.
Elrod?
Yes.
Director Beard?
She asked a question, so I would like to know the answer to that. What was your question? If it, something about an inspection?
About the dock?
You just asked a question at the end, and then he asked for you to have a closing. Do you remember what that was?
I don't remember. I said if it. If it's not part of the process, why did they even bother to inspect?
I don't know who would answer that.
Because the neighbors kept complaining that the dock.
Well, I'll give you a moment to, Mr. Barrett, let us complete with Ms. Curry. I'm going to call you up right at the end, okay? Okay.
Yeah, and there were some allegations in that presentation that were not true, so just so you'll know. But we tried to work within the framework. We should have called the police at every time, every occasion, but we were trying to be a good neighbor and deal with it as neighbors normally would among themselves. Now, in retrospect, we should have a police report of every infraction, but we only have the one arrest. We have multiple calls, but only one arrest,
Thank
two
you.
arrests. So, thank you very much.
Ms. Carol Graham? Probably thought I forgot you. Come forward, restate your name and address, please.
Carol Graham, and I live at 230 Little John Trail. So we are directly next door to the property we're talking about. I just wanted to let you know that there's a lot of shady business that goes on, and I think it all comes down to the judgment of the owners and who they hired to kind of look after the property. My husband called Ms. Hayes directly many, many times, letting her know that shady things were going on in the house. In fact, she encouraged us to call, and we were calling her instead of calling the police. Things did not get better. One instance, my sister was here visiting. We were trying to finish up my parents' estate after they had both passed away. And Rob was taking her to the airport. It was between 5 and 6 in the morning, and she went out to put her suitcase in the car, and there was a woman out there hiding under the fig bush between our two houses. And she whispered very softly, "Can you help me? Can you help me?" And Ann said, "What do you need?" And she kept looking back at the house. She had been held in that house evidently and had escaped. And Ann said, "Let me call the police for you." "No, please don't call the police." Ann came back in the house. The lady started walking down the street. I called the police because clearly she was in distress. We also had the situation that Elizabeth was talking about, where people were in the house, and Rob called Miss Hayes and said, "Is the house rented?" And she said, "No." And Rob said, "There are people in the house." So we called the police. The police came. They let one woman go. The other two were wanted for outstanding things with drug charges and drugs on them and drug paraphernalia. This is not what we want in our neighborhood. And no matter what we've done in trying to work with the owner to get this straightened out, it hasn't helped. My other comment I would like to make is, if you have someone that can't follow the rules to even apply for the initial short-term permit to change the zoning to then get the license, what makes you think this isn't going to cost the city a whole lot of money to be having to respond to all the calls that we're all going to make now because you would have like a laundry list of calls to the police had we called the police every time. And I would also like to make one comment about Shorty's comment that, that we would call the police whenever Miss Hayes or her family were there. We didn't. For the most part, we only called the police after we had talked to Miss Hayes. And that was just very recently. This is a difficult situation. We all have houses that we have put our life savings into. And the value of our property is like, because who wants to live next door to that? They also have not kept the property up. There were holes, and now there's still holes where squirrels or rats have crawled and chewed into the siding. It's just a mess.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions of Ms. Graham? Director Garcia?
Mayor, thank you. In our packet, we have a map that shows this property being right in the curve of Little John, and you said you live next door.
Yes.
And
I live toward the point from the house that we're talking about, and Miss Curry lives on the other side of the house. We have had where the property owners didn't mow the backyard and the grass was so high, we would get a call and say, do you know did you intend to have people doing yoga in your yard? No. Well, they couldn't get in the yard of this house because it wasn't kept up, so they're in our yard. They're on our dock.
But my question was in that curve.
Yes.
In the traffic, but there was mention of boat trailers.
Yes.
And, I mean, the type of things you would normally think of when you want to go to a lake property.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like it's very difficult without any parking, anybody parked out there.
It's
but
pretty much one lane road, and you have to get over in someone's yard or
That's
pull
what I was
into
gonna
their
ask.
driveway to let other people pass. So if someone is pulling a trailer, whether it's a boat trailer or the lawns, somebody's yard people or whatever, it's an issue. And heaven forbid any of us have a health emergency or a fire.
Right. Thank you
Any
very
additional
much.
questions of Ms. Graham? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask Mr. Barrett to come up if he has a short comment he'd like to make.
You said
Ms. Hayes wants to come up, that's fine. Please.
I don't want to address the board. I'm a reputable person. I've rented this property for 14 years. I've never had to redo my paint. Not one time. I had the interior painted 20 years ago. If I had rambunctious tenants, I would have had to repaint. Anytime I was called, when the neighbor called me about thinking somebody was in the house, I told him, let me call Mike, my caretaker. He said, don't. I think he's your problem. Let's me and you handle this. So that's what we did as friends. And when the police called me, was getting my child ready to perform at the Nutcracker, and they called me and said, someone's in there. I called the police immediately. I called them. When the police got there, the vehicle had departed. The police, I asked them, then I got another call from Mr. Graham that said, they're back. I took care of it. The police said, there's nobody here. I said, there's somebody in my house and I need help. I live in Texarkana. They got 3 people out of my home that day that were watching websites of VRBO rentals, and I'm not the only person that was abused by this in Hot Springs. And they said, do you want to press charges? I said, I want to press charges to the fullest. I feel violated. I could not go back in the home. I am basically a single mother. I did not go back in the home until I had my locks changed because I didn't know who had a key. He had been my caretaker for 10 years, and I trusted him. Okay?
Now I'll move on to my parking. I have 5 parking places within my yard, 2 in the carport, the rest on concrete. You're all welcome to drive by my house. I have a code on the front door. You're welcome to enter my house. I welcome anybody there. It's immaculate. Inside and out. I have a yard man. If he didn't know, I didn't know it. I take care of everything I can as it approaches. I will be glad for you to add to my short-term rental license that I can have no parking on the street. I am not afraid of that. The reason my inspection, the way it works, you call for an inspection and find out what you need. My smoke detectors didn't talk to each other. You have to have smoke detectors that talk to each other, and they were back ordered all over this city and everywhere else on Amazon. As soon as I got them and got them installed, then I passed. Do you want me to continue?
Please.
I needed a handrail where the first inspector didn't tell me I needed a handrail. I got somebody to go put up a handrail immediately because there was more than 2 steps stepping off my dock on one side. Anything I was asked to do, I did it as quick as I could do it. In the midnight hours they keep talking about, I was passing all my inspections, and then the dock thing came in. I personally didn't know they didn't inspect the dock in the beginning. And they told me that a neighbor had called and wanted the dock inspected. That's the knowledge I got. I immediately hired Menenzi Electrical Group, I believe that's their name, because they go to a church with a friend. They went, they got the list from the city of everything they wanted to look at. They inspected it, but I had to wait until they had a block for me to come. I didn't put it off. I had to wait for an appointment. The times that there were people there after I got notification were always family. I followed the rules that were given to me, and I am always slow with everything I do. I have a lot to do, but I do play by the rules, and I do need this income. And I passed my inspections by the due date, and that's all that was required of me.
Ms. Hayes, can you answer a question or two, Director Garcia?
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Do you have a property manager for your short-term rentals here in town now?
Yes, I do. Her name, do you need a name?
Well, you're the person you referred to as your caretaker.
I fired him that day immediately.
But that was your previous
Yes.
property manager.
He has not been back on my property.
And you have another one now that's here in town.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any further questions of Ms. Hayes? Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. And Ms. Hayes, you might want your lawyer to answer this question, but I want to just revisit the summer months of 2022 when you didn't have an STR license, yet you were continuing to operate as one. How might you explain that?
I had been a rental for 14 years. I honestly thought if I needed a license, I was grandfathered in because I had done it for so long. I've only ever operated on 2 websites. The minute I got notification, I had all of my dates blocked, so there could be no more rentals. The pictures didn't go away, but there were no available dates. I thought that meant I had terminated business.
So are you saying you were operating as an STR, and as soon as you were notified that you shouldn't be doing that, you tried to pull down your information from those sites, but the pictures remained?
I'm not real savvy with the computer, and I blocked all the dates because that was the quickest, fastest thing to do, was to block the dates.
Okay. Any,
I-
Director
follow-up
Garcia?
question. Are you stating that there were no dates available on either of those sites during the summer?
No, ma'am, I'm stating after I got notification, there was none. When the city sent me a letter about I had to have a license for short-term rental, that is the point I blocked the dates.
The first letter or the last letter?
It was, I still have never received what they said was the first letter. I've never found it. But when I got notification, I called them, and they said, and I said, I've blocked all my dates. And I thought that was shutting it off. So, anyway.
Did you receive any revenue from these platforms beyond that date?
No.
Thank you.
Any further questions of Ms. Hayes? Thank you. We'll give Mr. Barrett, did you have any comment you wanted to make in closing?
I did not.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you. Discussion, was there anybody else who might wanted to speak on this that did not sign up? Seeing none, discussion amongst directors? Any discussion amongst directors? Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to drag this out, but I do know that we, and particularly in my district and some of the other districts, particularly that have lake property, we've had for years part-time residents, summer homes, and people come here that aren't residents, but they come here repeatedly, and they do become part of the neighborhood. And hopefully they'll be retirees here and become permanent residents. The introduction of the short-term rentals into our neighborhoods has had mixed results. And that I do believe that safety is of most importance, but as is in our the purpose of our stated in our ordinance for short-term rentals, so is the character and density of the neighborhood. And losing neighbors, you start losing your neighborhood. And we already are at 21%, is my understanding, of short-term rentals in this area with a very narrow street. And around this curve, we, Mr. City Manager, we may need a signage as we added about another street where it's one lane, or a warning about one lane up ahead, especially at this curve. It appears very potentially dangerous if you have a collision there. But I respect our residents, and I respect how they want to preserve the character of their neighborhood. And at what time does the saturation become too much? We still have that subjective judgment to look at the density and the other attributes that are included in our ordinance. I am in favor of businesses, but this is a residential area. We have a cap on residential because it was zoned residential. And it really hits me when the residents say, we wanted to be in the city limits to have zoning protection. And it was not thought of at that time when that was annexed that we would be facing this now as businesses start taking over a residential neighborhood. So I oppose this.
Very good. Any other comments by directors?
I just have a question for Director Garcia. Where did you get 21% density?
By the, well, that's what it was last summer. I mean, this is my district. I keep up with what's going on in my district.
Okay, I was just making sure that wasn't something that I missed somewhere, because we didn't have that in the packet that I could find.
Mayor, I hate to
No.
drag this out, but I have a question too.
Any further questions of Director Garcia?
No, not of Director Garcia.
I'm going to ask you how many miles of paving you got versus Dudley Webb in his district for. Any further questions on this?
Yes, I don't want to drag this out any further either, but we do have the fire chief here, and I would like him to weigh in on this street and the ability of our emergency vehicles to go down this hairpin curve.
This is Fire Chief Ed Davis. Welcome.
Thank you. Much like the areas around the lake that we've annexed in, none of this was planned, it just occurred. And by that, you have different levels of development. And, this road is narrow. Does it meet city street standards? No, it does not. Is it narrow? Yep, but it's narrow like a lot of other roads that we're dealing with in these areas. And it is something that we do have to deal with. Is it adequate for a fire apparatus to traverse it? Yes, it is. Would it be more difficult with on-street parking? Absolutely. It's all a mixed bag. I mean, it's a wonderful area, great lakefront houses and all. But at the same time, you pay a price for that simply because there was no oversight from the city at the time it was put together. So, can we deal with it? Absolutely. At the same time, is it optimal? No, ma'am, it is not optimal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion amongst directors? Director Trustee.
Thank you, Mayor.
You've been quiet all night.
That map that you just had up there, it looks like there are 50 some lots on Little John Trail. And did I hear the comment correctly earlier that there were 4 STRs in this neighborhood? Is that right? 5? Okay. So that's 10. Excuse me?
Licensed.
5 licensed
There's other,
STRs.
that haven't.
Okay.
got the- Yeah,
Okay.
but there's not 50 houses. You're talking lots and houses.
That's right. I'm talking lots. It looks like on Little John Trail on both sides of both sections of that street. And that curve is very narrow. There's a map in our packet as well, not just this plat that we see here, but there's a map in there, and you can see a little clearer from that,
We'll
just
pull it up.
exactly how this lies. Right.
Right.
Okay.
I get you.
Okay, thank you.
Call the question.
Was there any, were we trying to pull up another map or no?
Well,
I thought that's what we were trying to
Everybody's
do.
spinning.
We pulled it up in our packet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I pulled it up and looked
Mine's
in the
spinning.
packet. And it's
Director
not a complete map, but you can see there are several houses
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Director Webb?
Yeah, Mayor, there's one color map that's on that attachment. It's page 13 of 13.
Right.
And it looks like you were talking about, it may not have the full disclosure of all of Little John Trail, but at least in this portion that we see, which does include the property in question,
That's it.
that there are about 22 properties here, approximately. Yes, that map.
Okay. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Director Beard.
No.
Dobbs Smith.
No.
Webb.
No.
Garcia.
No.
Trustee.
No.
Holliday.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
No. Resolution fails. Continue with Resolution R-23-21 and ask City Attorney to read by title.
Mayor, this is Resolution R-23-21, a resolution granting a short-term residential rental special use permit for 107 Forest Park Place. That concludes your reading. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director
Second.
Trustee, seconded by Director Webb. Once again, we'll hear from Kathy Salmon, Planning and Development Director.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an appeal from a decision of the Board of Adjustment to issue a special use permit for short-term residential rental at 107 Forest Park Place. Again, the Hot Springs Code requires special use permit approval as a prerequisite to short-term residential rental license in the residential zone districts 1, 2, 3, 4A, and L. Hot Springs Code requires an applicant for special use permit to provide evidence of a city certificate of occupancy report, a dimension site plan, a floor plan, as well as remittance of the $475 fee. 107 Forest Park Place owners provided the required documentation, remitted the fee, and the special use permit was approved by the planning director. Planning director's decision was appealed by neighbors to the Board of Zoning Adjustment, BZA. Following public notice, a neighbor appealed BZA's special use permit approval for Board of Directors consideration. The appellant in this case is Julia Bray. She is appealing on the grounds that off-street parking is insufficient. No off-street parking was required for 107 Forest Park Place as the home was constructed approximately 1940 prior to the city's off-street parking requirement. And meeting the submittal requirements for a special use permit, the permit was approved and is now before you for reconsideration.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Selman? Directors with questions for Ms. Selman?
I have a question, Mayor.
Director Trustee?
Kathy, it says there's a concrete driveway. Is that driveway empty onto Forest Park Place?
I
Or is
believe it does.
Empty onto Shadow Terrace from the map in our?
I would need to refer to the map.
Okay. It shows there are
I
two
believe it's on
parking-
the Shadow Terrace side.
It shows there are 2 parking spaces on the Shadow Terrace side.
Yeah, I believe that's where the parking
Okay, and then
empties too.
there's a picture. I'd forgotten
Yep.
about that. I saw that earlier. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. How many did you say could occupy?
On this one?
Yes, ma'am.
Glad you asked. I didn't, my oversight. This is a 2-bedroom home. The overnight maximum occupancy is 6.
And there's no off-street parking, and how many can park in the driveway?
It appears that there is parking on the property.
Paved parking
Paved,
Looks like it.
yes.
for 6? Or
For
how many
6, I
vehicles?
doubt it.
3, 2?
I can only tell you that parking was not required. It is not a standard for this particular home. Although there is paved parking available on site. I do not know the capacity.
But again, if there are 3 vehicles and it parks 2, if the ordinance doesn't require, where do people park?
They park wherever it is legal to do so.
Thank you.
Any further questions of Ms. Selman? Any other director with a question for Ms. Selman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we have anybody sign up to speak on this?
No, sir, we didn't.
Oh, there's someone in the back.
Yeah. Sir, come forward, restate state your name and address and district, please.
Hello, I'm John Boyd. I work for the Ramirez, cleaning up the property and stuff. There is paved parking for 2 cars there. There is a garage also. There's a 2-car parking garage. Everything does meet the requirements. Oh, by the way, 600 Ridgeview Street. I'm right around the corner from them, so whenever they have any kind of complaints or something, they want me to go check something out, I can.
What was your address again?
600 Ridgeview Street.
So what's your association with the property or with the owner?
I have a cleaning business. and
Okay.
So I clean the property and just kind of check stuff out.
Okay. Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. Are you the property manager for the
I'm not a
property, or
manager.
is?
I just do the house cleaning, but they'll give me a shout every once in a while. Hey, go look at something, or shut the water off. It's gonna freeze, something of that nature.
So is there a separate property manager?
No, ma'am. We do the cleaning. I do the cleaning and stuff like that, and they have somebody else that does the yard now. So they take care of everything pretty much yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any additional questions for this gentleman? Director Trustee?
One more. Do the Ramirez, does that family live in town?
No, sir.
Where do they live?
I think they're in Fayetteville-ish area.
Okay, I missed that if it was in our packet. Okay.
Any additional questions?
Mayor, if I could, I'd like to follow up on Director Garcia and Director Trustee's questions with regarding to the local representative that can be contacted and is capable of responding within 60 minutes of a
Right.
call.
That
Is required in order to have an STR license. This
Right.
is not an STR license. This is an SUP, a special use permit, which is a prerequisite in order to apply for an STR license.
So is this the only property that the applicant has for STR property in Hot Springs?
As far as I know, it is.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, appreciate you. We had nobody sign up to speak for or against. Is there somebody here to speak against this property being an STR?
Mayor, the named appellant was Julia Bray. Is Julia Bray present?
Ms. Selman, can you come back forward? Ms. Bray, did she communicate to you what her concerns were?
She communicated via her appeal, and
Well, was there something?
that
Go ahead.
there is, I believe, a copy of the appeal in the packet.
Yes. Dated October 27th.
Yeah,
Yes.
appeal of approval. Says that several of the residents are concerned about a business being run in our neighborhood. This is also against the bill of assurance in our subdivision. That was their original appeal in October. That was heard by BZA in November. The follow-up appeal stated that there was insufficient parking.
Okay. Director Webb?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at their bill of assurance, and I haven't found yet where it mentions anything about the forbiddance of STRs or that Ms. Garcia has signed it.
The bill of assurance is an agreement between the property owners, and the city is not a party to that agreement. And so that remains between the property owners. It's not something we can or do enforce.
I guess I was bringing that up to you to see, in response to Mayor McCabe's question, like, did the appellate have any objections or any kind of message to have you share with us? And if including the bill of assurance as part of the appellate, then did she mention at all where in this bill of assurance it talks about restriction of STRs, or that she has any knowledge that the Garcias signed it, if it does?
I believe there is a copy of the bill of assurance. It says Wilson Properties, Forest Park subdivision. I don't know what page it is in your packet. If you're flipping through quickly, it's something that looks like it was done with a typewriter in 1949. So,
Yes, ma'am, I'm looking at it.
or
and I-
before, so.
Any new ones would be filed at the courthouse, not with the city.
Right, and I do want to make a correction. I was saying Miss Garcia, and it's Miss Ramirez. Thank you.
But this is the documentation that was provided by the appellant.
I have a question.
Director.
Did
Smith,
did you
please.
mention what the vote was with the Planning Commission and the BZA?
The BZA vote obviously was to approve. I do not recall if it was
Any
unanimous.
dissension?
I believe it was, but I would not want to bet the farm on that.
4-0.
4-0.
Yeah.
4-0?
4-0.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of Ms. Selman? Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, Miss Julia Bray's not here. Any other members of the neighborhood that want to speak on this that might be here? Hearing none, then we'll go on to discussion amongst directors. Any discussion amongst directors? Director Webb?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Again, I'm looking back at the bill of assurance, and yeah, it was dated 1949. I'm not seeing where Miss Ramirez has any type of signage on here. Now, it could be where they just assume that if she purchases it from a property from someone in 49 who signed it, that it would carry over. But even to that extent, I would ask that the appellate please explain that to us, and how maybe something that's dated in 1949 is applicable, or maybe not in the need to be
Yeah, I'll-
revised as the
I'll-
years go on.
Sure,
So,
I'll give a shot. Bill of assurance, once it's filed, runs with the land and it goes forever until it's amended or revoked. However, the city is not privy to that agreement. We have no authority whatsoever to enforce a bill of assurance. So the bill of assurance in this regard is irrelevant.
Any other discussion amongst directors? Director Webb?
yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would think even if the bill of assurance were relevant in this case, I think what we're missing in this bill of assurance is any specific verbiage to address STRs or, special use permits too.
Absolutely, Director. In fact, that's what started our discussion from city staff and board members on this issue, was a bill of assurance that said no commercial use. And the Arkansas Court of Appeals said that a overnight rental of a residential location was not commercial use.
Non-commercial use. That's right.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Dobbs Smith.
Yes.
Webb.
Aye.
Garcia.
No.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Beard.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now we'll move on to consider Resolution R-23-22 and ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-23-22, a resolution approving a change order to contract number 2 with Belt Construction, Inc. for the new raw water supply transmission pipeline at the intake site as part of the Lake Ouachita Water Treatment Supply Project. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So move.
Director Trustee, seconded by
Second.
Director Holliday. And our staff report will be provided by Todd Pillar, Engineering Project Manager. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is a small little contract to finish our raw water pipeline. It's the last little piece. It's be the last project that's awarded on the raw water pipeline, and it's connecting Lake Ouachita to our existing water plant on Cozy Acres Road. We waited to bring this to the board until we had the 2022 water bond issue funds in place. And Belt Construction built Contract 1, which it'll connect to. That was completed in August of 2021. And Belt Construction is now currently working on Contract 2 as part of the raw water pipeline. And if we issue this project or award this project tonight, what we can do is we can order the pipe and get the pipe coming. So when Michael's is done with our 60-inch tunnel, hopefully in July, the pipe will be here in July, and we'll be able to put this 900 feet of 48-inch pipe connected to, and we'll be making water at the Washita Water Plant via Lake Washita by the end of the year. Bill tells me that once they get the pipe, construction will be 45 days. And of course, it'll be funded out of the 2022 Water Bond Fund.
Very good. That's probably the shortest presentation you've ever made. I'm sorry, I was expecting to keep it rolling.
Maybe
So-
he's a Kentucky fan, I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, you're right. Any questions of Mr. Pillar? Director Webb.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at all of these numbers, and I'm looking at this resolution, and I'm going to ask that you help me make sense of all of it. So I do have a few questions, and I'm trying to do as best as I can to make sure that these questions are not anything that negate what you just shared with us. So this is contract number 2, and contract number 2, this resolution is for the final portion of this contract. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, Contract 2 is disembobulated. There's one part that goes from Airport Road up to the south side of Mazarin Creek, and the other part of Contract 2 goes from an existing water plant down to Lake Hamilton. And this will be a change order that'll put the rest of the pipeline between the intake tunnel to Contract 1 at the Blakely Mountain Dam Road.
Okay. So how far into digging this tunnel are we? Is it safe to say we're about 30%?
Actually, today we had a progress meeting. They're right at 1,000 feet. Yesterday, they made 15 feet in 12 hours.
Of what, 2,600 feet, or what's?
Yes, sir, out of 2,600 feet.
Okay. If we encounter some tunneling problems moving forward, and I'm hoping that we don't, and not to say that I anticipate that we do, but there have been some that have come up kind of unforeseen as we've been going along. What happens if the tunnel cannot be completed for some unforeseen reason? What are our backup plans with this plant? Do we have any?
As far as the tunnel?
As far as this contract 2. So if we take this 1.2 to be invested in contract 2, this is money that's going towards the completion of the plant, right? Not necessarily the funneling or the tunneling?
No. This is for the raw water pipeline between the intake site and 17 miles down to Amity Road, where the new water plant's being built.
Okay.
But this little section, if we award it so they can order the pipe, when the tunnel does get complete, we can take Lake Washita water and put it to our existing plant without pumping out of Upper Lake Hamilton.
Right. So this plant is, would you say this plant is somewhat depending upon the finishing of the tunnel to be operational?
Yes, they have to demobilize before we can start this change order for contract 2.
So if the tunnel's a no-go, what good does the plant do us?
The tunnel will not be a no-go.
Can't be.
Huh?
Can't be.
We've got, it's a design build, so, we won't have any other changes.
We've had many progress meetings with Michael
Yeah.
Trenchless. There will be a 60-inch hole through Blakely Mountain.
Would there be any cause of concern to consider having any plan B if the tunnel is a no-go?
Should anything like that happen, we'll go back to a different conventional plan, which is basically you have an intake site that'll pump directly out of the lake, pump it over the mountain into this same pipe that's going to head to our plant. So
Gravity fed?
it won't be gravity
No, it
fed
won't
at
be
that
gravity.
point.
You got to go over elevation 910.
Yeah.
Only if you get up to the top.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Michael's trenchless, that's all they do for a living, is drill holes through the earth.
So, this 1.2 for this resolution, is this coming out of what was projected for the entire amount of contract 2, which was like 9.1?
No, it's a change order.
So it's a change
It's
order.
coming out of the new 2022 bond issue.
So did we have any anticipation for this change order prior to acquiring the bond in
Yes,
December?
sir.
We did?
Staff plans, yes.
So this was included in
Actually,
that $45
we
million?
budgeted $2 million for it.
Okay.
This work is going to have to take place. The reason we're bringing it as a change order to contract 2 is Belt was the lowest bidder when we bid this project out. However, we put it on hold in lieu of this last issue of the bond. Now that bond's
Correct.
passed, we can begin this process again. If we went back out for bid, we know that those prices are going to come in even higher.
Yeah, they're gonna be
So
up.
by being able to do a change order contract 2, we can go ahead and get this pipe coming. And as of last week, the last thing that I heard is this type of pipe right now is running about 50 weeks out. So the sooner that we're able to award these contracts and get that pipe on order, the better. We're looking at a couple other jobs that we were going to bid out as one whole unit. But those things are probably 4 or 5 months away, but we know the pipe and the distance we're going to need, so we'll be bringing you some of these jobs where we're buying the pipe. We need to go ahead and get the pipe on order and have it ready to come once we know that the design is to a point where we can do that. But this change order here, as Todd mentioned, we had $2 million budgeted. All of these pieces we know because we've already got the plan in place. Fortunately, it's only 1.2 million, and we're trying to save any dollars that we can on the project. But all of these things we'll be bringing you are already maybe not designed, but they're in the plan. So,
That's correct.
Any additional questions of Mr. Pillar? Or Director Webb, did you have any further questions?
The only follow-up I would say, and I just want to thank you again for explaining that, City Manager Bill. Do we anticipate any other change orders moving forward? Or with this change order to complete the final portion of contract 2, would that kind of close out the potential for other change orders?
Contract 2, yeah, this will be the last one.
for that contract, but I want you to understand, this is a huge project, and we'll have change orders until the end of the project. Some will be small, some will be a little bit larger.
But to
Director
further
Garcia.
add to that, that was what we issued the additional bond for, and all that addition was budgeted for that bond to be used for.
Correct.
Based on engineer estimates.
Yeah.
We have contingencies in there too, but I don't like to get into those if I don't have to.
Well, I guess the other question I would have is moving forward, if we do anticipate some change of orders to take place moving forward, and these change of orders are based on the acquisition from the bond that was in December of '22, if they're at a later date, would inflation or any type of other unforeseen measures push us for the need to inquire another bond? Or do you feel like we've got enough from what was acquired in December to get us to the finish line per se?
We believe we have enough money to finish this project with this last issue of bond, or we would have went higher. You don't have a crystal ball. You can't tell what's in the future. But everything we know today, from design, from cost, and we're actually seeing some of those costs starting to come down a little bit. Hence, 1.2 million versus 2 million. So I think we're going to be fine. Anything can happen out there, but given everything we know today, we have enough funds to finish this project.
Yeah, like City Manager Bill Burrow said, the more things that we can purchase up front and cut the schedule down, like purchasing the pipe and have it owner furnished, contractor installed, the better off we'll be.
Thank you, Todd. Any additional questions? Thank you. Did we have anyone sign up to speak?
No, sir.
Discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Webb.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Beard.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution's adopted. Our final three action items are all ordinances, so we'll begin. I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So moved.
Director Trustee,
Second.
seconded by Director Garcia. I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules to read by title only. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Council, please read by title.
Mayor, this is ordinance number O-23-02, an ordinance waiving the competitive bidding and approving the procurement of certain goods and services for upgrades to the Headworks International Bar Screen at the Hot Springs Creek Sewage Pumping Station from Instrument and Supply, Inc. That concludes your reading. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Director Dobbs Smith, seconded by Director Garcia. And once again, Todd Pillar, Engineering Project Manager, will provide the staff report.
I've gone from water to wastewater now. So this is for mechanical and electrical upgrades to the existing bar screen at the Hot Springs Creek Pump Station. We're revamping that station, and we're going to redo, I'll bring you shortly here, the pumps and the piping and so forth as a more board action request. But the screen has reached its end of its serviceable life, as Brian said in our agenda meeting. It's over 50 years old, and we're going to mechanical upgrades. We're going to upgrade the pumps, so we need to change the screen, but the slot it has to go into at the pump station is the same. So the manufacturer's going to come from Houston, and they're going to pick it up, and they're going to take it back to Houston. They're going to replace all the parts and pieces, and then they're also going to upgrade the controls so that our staff can see the alarm functions on the screen remotely from their tablets and so forth in their offices. It was brought up in the agenda meeting that we do have 2 bar screens at the Davison Drive plant that will handle the screenings while this one's being serviced and upgraded. And the fee, or the PO, will be to Instrument Supply, who's the sole source supplier of Headworks screens in Arkansas. Will be $247,663.67, and it is out of the board-approved, funded out of the board-approved 2023 sewer lift budget account.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Pillar on this topic? Director Garcia.
To me, in going through this, we're not really waiving competitive bidding because it's the sole source for our system. So I didn't view it as not having competitive bidding, but
well, we had
to everything in our system, it looks like this would have to be done with them.
it is specialty equipment. There was a previous ordinance that Harmony, I think, found that we had for waiving competitive bidding, but because of the dollar amount, $248,000, I thought I should bring it to the board.
Very good. Any additional questions, Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. Todd, in our packet, it says on the background information, it's reached the end of its serviceable life, as you just mentioned. So are we basically just rebuilding the entire, because if we're just replacing parts and going to put that part back in, it's not at the end of its serviceable life, it's refurbished and then it has 50 more years, is that? I guess are we buying something new, or are we taking new parts and building a new screen? What are we doing?
Okay, there's a certain hole or slot it has to fit in.
Okay.
So really the only parts that are going to be reused, if you will, are the frame.
Okay.
Yeah. And the things that go in the bottom of the channel.
Okay.
Everything else they're going to update and put all new.
Okay. Okay. So while we're servicing it, the most.
Oh yeah, new motors,
most of it
new
is
drives,
new parts.
right?
That makes
It'll all be brand new.
New life.
Yep.
Okay. I just want to be sure. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Very good. Any additional questions of Todd? Thank you. Anybody sign up?
No, sir.
Discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Beard.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Webb.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Now we'll consider ordinance O-23-03, and I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So moved.
Director Trustee.
Second.
Seconded by Director Garcia. I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules, read by title only. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Council, please read by title.
Ordinance O-23-03, an ordinance adopting the International Property Maintenance Code 2021 edition, amending and repealing certain ordinances and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Trustee.
Second.
Second by Director Garcia, and Mike Scott, Chief Building Official, will provide the staff report. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. I'm here to talk about the International Property Maintenance Code and Title 17. The International Property Maintenance Code was the blueprint used to create Title 17, known as the Hot Springs Property Maintenance Code. The City of Hot Springs desires to adopt the International Property Maintenance Code with additions, deletions, and revisions. The International Property Maintenance Code has more detail on fire safety requirements, which are in line with the Arkansas Fire Prevention Codes and the Hot Springs Building Code. It also offers more details in the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical requirements, all of which are in line with their respective state codes. The uniformity of the codes allows all the building safety and inspectors and neighborhood services inspectors to be on the same page when performing inspections. We are requesting that Title 17 be revised to reference the International Property Maintenance Code while also maintaining several of its specific requirements, including any definitions that are in the Hot Springs Property Maintenance Code but not in the International Property Maintenance Code. Other examples are the maximum grass height of 6 inches, requirements of parking surfaces in yards, as well as the public tree ordinance will remain. Do you have any questions?
Any questions of Mike?
I had,
Director
I
Garcia?
wasn't sure about the lien, the portion that addressed the lien and the time limitations. What,
All of that remains as it did in Title 17.
Okay, so
That's
that remains
specific.
the same
Those,
too?
those parts that are specific to Hot Springs that our board adopted over the years, we kept all that in there.
Okay,
Those
okay.
specific
That-
things.
I just wanted to-
We're not asking to take out anything that you guys have adopted in the past. We didn't change any of that.
Hold on, let me understand your question. You're asking about liens?
well, it had a limitation period for the 18 months limitation period in subdivisions. Cities cleanup lien claim was not time barred where the 18 months, what,
You're looking at an attachment.
yes?
Okay. You're
In
looking
the
at,
it was in the packet.
yeah, there were 2 attachments in the packet. Those are state statutes. 1454-903 was attached. 1454-902 was attached, as well as 1454-904 was attached. And so we are not continuing on with what the city had in its previous ordinance because it had 18 months. It has been changed to 10 years.
Okay,
We are-
that's
We are,
what-
we are now going to follow state law, and those shall govern. That's referenced on page 5 of the ordinance itself. But I wanted you to have a copy of what we were referencing.
So, what does that mean from 18 months to 10 years?
We have 10 years to enforce a lien, not 18 months.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I properly understood.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
It is now 10 years.
It will follow with the property for 10 years.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions of Mike or Brian? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody sign up?
No, sir.
Any discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Beard.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Webb.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Our final action item is to consider ordinance O-23-04. And I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So moved.
Director Trustee, seconded by.
Second.
Director Webb. I have a motion, I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules, read by title only. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Council, please read by title.
Ordinance O-23-04, an ordinance adopting the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code, Volumes 1, 2, and 3, 2021 editions, and certain amendments, and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Trustee, seconded by
Second.
Director Garcia. And again, Mike Scott and our
Thank you.
Fire Chief Ed Davis will make their presentation. Thank you.
State Fire Marshal of the State of Arkansas has adopted the 21 Arkansas Fire Prevention Codes based off the International Code Council codes. Volume 1 is the Fire Code, Volume 2 is the Building Code, and Volume 3 is the Residential Code. These new codes address new technologies and updates to the current codes. The State Fire Marshal and a 40-person committee reviewed these codes and made changes more specific to Arkansas. By adopting the most current state additions, the City of Hot Springs will comply with the enforcement of the Arkansas Fire Prevention Codes. There has been no increase in fees. Are there any questions?
Any questions of Mike or Ms. Fire Chief Davis? Director Garcia.
I don't know if it's, which one of you it applies to, or both?
Well, ask the question and they'll jump in.
But,
And then we'll step up, I'll guarantee you.
The building heights change.
The building heights,
What-
that's in the building
What impact
code.
will that have?
That's in the building code. There's codes for that, but there's also some in the zoning ordinance. There's that too, so.
So it'll impact both.
It's multifaceted, really.
Yeah.
And a lot of it depends upon the type of, like, as far as like the requirement for a building to retroactively, high-rise building, have a sprinkler system. That depends upon how the interior finish of the means of egress is, the exterior and interior finish of the means of egress doors, in other words, the amount of glass in it. There's a lot of different factors that go into making the determination on which one of the building heights actually applies in the fire code and in the building code. A lot of it is specific to what an architect might determine that they want to use as far as the base materials to achieve some type of aesthetic look. So, the code gives someone a lot of license, but it also has certain requirements if you're going to do certain things that, you're going to have to spend more for fire defense, more for separation requirements and things like that. But as far as like the intent of the fire code and the intent of the building code, it all remains the same. That is to establish a minimum level of safety within structures in the community. And all that's determined by occupancy classification and the other things that I enumerated to you earlier.
So the standpipes would not be allowed if it's over 20 feet?
Well, it would be required. In other words, in those areas downtown where we have some of the older buildings, we've tried to deal with folks as kindly as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And there are still some people that are working on their standpipe system, a couple of them. And so we have to have our ordinances consistent with the 2012 code. In the 2012 code, we said at that point in time that we were going to measure a building's height for requirement of standpipe at 20 feet instead of 30 feet.
Okay.
And so we just need to stay consistent with that. That's not changing. And so, we're still dealing with some older structures, and people are also making change of use. I mean, stuff that at one point in time would have just been residential is now going to multifamily. And so,
Yes.
that would apply to them. They would have to put a standpipe in a building like that.
Okay.
So we just want to make sure that everyone does the same thing and we're holding everyone to the same level of accountability.
Of course.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you both.
Any additional questions of Mike or Chief Davis? Fire Marshal Tom Broughton, do you have any comments you want to make?
No, sir, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know you've been sitting there for 2.5 hours or more, and want to acknowledge you and your attendance. And again, Chief Davis, he comes to speak on the last item, but we pull him up on an STR issue, so your counsel's always welcomed.
Utility hitter.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a staff report has been provided, and no one signed up to speak on it.
No,
Any
sir.
discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, without further delay, we'll call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Beard.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Trustee,
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye, ordinance is adopted. That completes the action items for this evening. We're now into board commentary. Is there any board member that'd like to make a comment?
Yes.
Director Webb.
No.
Director Garcia, go ahead.
No, he called upon you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I've just got a couple of comments, and the first is really to give thanks to the street department here of our city, especially for keeping our roads safe as humanly possible. Last week during the freezing temperatures and the freezing rain, and even the rain that was falling when the temperatures dropped well below freezing, the roadways in Hot Springs were as safe as they could be given the weather circumstances. So again, a huge thanks to the street department and all of those really involved in coordinating this safety effort, including City Manager Bill Burrow, who was a leader in this safety measure. So I appreciate y'all for keeping the road safe. And I think I speak for a lot of residents here in Hot Springs in saying that. And the other is I received a letter from a couple of constituents of mine, and I just want to share it with the board. To whom it may concern, I have lived in the beautiful city of Hot Springs since 1996. I have played soccer at Kimry Park since the early 2000s. It has been so long I can't even remember the exact time. I have met wonderful citizens and highly talented players there. Kimry Park is so special to me because of the history we have there. Myself, Luis Hernandez, Abraham Flores, who has been playing at Kimry for over 18 years, and Luis Yanez, who has been playing for over 20 years, have seen the best in people at that park. The three of us, along with many citizens, would feel devastated if Kimry Soccer was to be removed. The many generations that we have seen come and go is a beautiful thing to see. It is a place where people get away from their everyday problems. It is a small moment for us to enjoy each other while physically getting active. If soccer was taken away from Kimry, the future generations would really miss out on great opportunities to not only improve in soccer, but to make thousands of beautiful memories with citizens of this beautiful community. Citizens of all generations, different backgrounds, and cultures come together and make it work at Kimry while having fun. We would really love to see this soccer community and culture continue at Kimry Park. Sincerely, Luis Hernandez, Abraham Flores, and Luis Yanez. And I want you three to know, and others, that I support you 100%. Thank you.
Did you have a second letter, or was that, you got, okay, thank you. Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to thank Deputy City Manager Lance Spicer for sending, I received the parking survey, and it's very interesting, and I don't know if that's on the website yet. It's going to be, but I asked everyone to look at that. We had, what was it, around 1,000 responses, and it's very interesting, and I think that it's good information that everybody should look at it, and thank you for getting that sent out.
Very good. Any other, Director Dobbs Smith?
Yes, last night we had one of our neighborhoods in District 3 had a neighborhood watch meeting, and I wanted to compliment Public Safety Officer Omar Cervantes for the great job that he did. It was greatly appreciated. And we had an added bonus of our Acting Chief Harverton was there and gave us some excellent information. And also Captain Lisa King, and the residents appreciated it. And if anyone does not, if you don't have a neighborhood watch in your neighborhood, then contact your director or the police department directly, and that can be arranged for you. It's a really good thing. Thank you.
Any other director have a comment? Well, I'll be leaving Levi Hospital after 35 years and 9 months. I jokingly told Bill I'll pull a chair up and next to him. But I'll be downtown on a regular basis. I probably shouldn't say this with Ed Davis here and the fire marshal, but after nearly 36 years in the same office, I don't know whether it's should be sectioned off as an archaeological dig or a hazmat area. But I do jokingly say, as I'm kind of going through and organizing, that there's different strata levels, and a lot of history in that office, and a lot of good memories, and a lot of good times, and a lot of worry and heartache and the pressure and all that. But it's Levi's been a wonderful organization, and it's here to stay. It wasn't always that way when I first got there. It was nip and tuck, and but we were able to get through the worst of things and continue to serve the community. So, but you'll see me downtown, and I'll be getting back into my fitness routine.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I was like,
Yes,
I was the most
congratulations.
senior healthcare executive in Arkansas at the time of, as of Friday. So. Pardon? I was there longer than you've been on the earth.
I have to sign up the contest.
So with that, any further comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. We're all confused with how to do that, so all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Same. Opposed?